Hey, everybody, welcome to another How to Succeed podcast, the show that helps you get to the top and stay there. This is How to Succeed in Commercial Construction. The following podcast is copyrighted by Sandler Systems, Inc. and protected by U.S. copyright laws. You can subscribe to the podcast in your favorite app, wherever you're listening or watching to it now would be a good start. And don't forget, I'm your host, Mike Montague, Director of Community Engagement at Sandler, and my guest this week is Matt Newberger, a longtime Sandler trainer, and we're going to talk with him about how to succeed in commercial construction. All right, Matt, let's jump into it and just talk about the state of the industry right now, because I feel like it's a weird time. Prices are up, inflation is up, so are interest rates, and inventory in construction, like home building, is down. But commercial inventory is up because of the pandemic and people losing their offices. So it seems like a weird mix of a lot of extremes here. Tell us about a little bit more about what's going on.
Well, construction is one of the largest industries in the country, right? I mean, if you think about it, anything where you're sitting right now, where you're going, everything is based on the built environment. Without the built environment, we'd all be living outside. No one would be driving cars. We'd be in a very, very different world. But it has been a very interesting time for construction. It probably always has. So I would say right now, some of the things that we see is with obviously COVID. A lot of people decided that they didn't want to go back to the office. So if we could just take people that need houses and move them into the empty office buildings, that'd be great. I think the challenge we're seeing is that some people now are moving back to the office, right? So if you've been working out of your home and the dog's barking and the mailman's knocking on your door, and you have other people living in your home that really don't want to have to be quiet all the time, an office might be a great idea. So we're going to see that pendulum swing a little bit, but the challenges that the construction industry faces, just in terms of demand and where that demand is coming from, even how rotation in things like retail are being affected. What we're seeing are some macro conditions. We're seeing interest rates rising, which is going to have some implications that haven't hit yet, meaning folks that have financed buildings or building a building, you may have used a short-term note, which they expected to stay at a certain interest rate, which may have been 3%, which is now 8%. So we're going to see some challenges in both residential, what I'll call multifamily apartment building residential. We'll see some impact on commercial office space and in commercial buildings. Warehousing right now is one of the hottest spaces, whether it's data or whether it's just moving things around the country. But interest rates are going to affect those and the ability to invest. In addition to that, COVID brought on supply chain issues. So procuring what you need when you need it has gotten harder than ever. Buyers have had a hard time understanding that. If you're an owner and you want to build a building and you're hoping to build that building in a tight time frame so that you can secure the lending that you need and the investors that you need, you may have to tell them it's going to take longer than your pro forma suggested. That's going to be hard. Labor shortages. People coming out of school are not going to the construction industry, and that is creating labor shortages. A lot of the commercial construction companies that have been around, if they're very large, they're dealing with different situations than what I'd call a mid-sized construction company. A mid-sized construction company is not a billion-dollar construction company, but they have mature ownership that would like to exit the business. And they have a struggle in now developing leaders that can sustain and grow the business for the next generation while they're facing last. We will see the biggest transformation in use of technology in an industry which for years has really not been at the forefront of cutting edge technology. Construction is going to be forced into that due to procurement, due to labor, due to leadership challenges, due to the requirements for information and reporting and OSHA safety standards. It's going to be a requirement that these companies transform themselves and not only go out and seek a profit and build a nice building. They're going to have to do it while utilizing the latest in drone technology, the latest in AI, and the latest in developing their people to be more effective communicators. On a typical job, you could have 3,000 decisions made. And if any of those decisions are made wrong, there's this old saying, right? It's like, measure twice and cut once. Sometimes the finishing of that sentence is only if the, safety inspector is looking or, watching. So there's a lot of challenges coming the way, but it is a great industry, and it also has a tremendous amount of opportunity here in the United States. Interestingly, I'll be visiting our Sandler trainer in Israel, Mike, and we're going to be talking about the commercial construction industry over there and how things might be done differently. Israel has some cutting edge technology, and they're usually one of the Silicon Valleys of the world in developing new technologies that address some of the world's biggest problems when it comes to construction. So that'll be interesting. We may have to talk about getting you involved in that. But
come back and do a part 2 with James. I think he's going to be on the podcast here in a couple of weeks as well. So
we'll make that happen. Yeah.
Let's roll into attitude here and talk about what the ideal attitude is for leaders or salespeople in this industry, where you said it seems like a lot of risk, a lot of uncertainty. There's probably difficult conversations going on, but I also think it's an industry where long-term thinking is extremely valuable. That a lot of these things seem to be short-term issues that if we look further out, everything will be okay. Buildings won't sit empty for very long. The property values will continue to rise over time, right? What do you think?
You have to have long-term thinking. It's hard to do when you're looking at your balance sheet and you don't like the way it looks, or your income statement and you don't like the way that it works. I think people that go to the construction industry, the project managers, executives, estimators, owners, they are great, really good-hearted people that have to deal with some very scary situations. First of all, there is a lot of stress when it comes to a construction project, and that is become a problem in the industry. The amount of stress that people are dealing with. When you're an owner, we first have to look at that construction owner, that business owner, whether it's a plumber, it's an electrician, it's a general contractor. They are constantly fighting to make money. And if you're not very good at what you do, one mistake could be the difference between your business making money that year and losing money that year and having to lay people off. That is a lot to put on an owner, but that's what they go through every day. So we got to keep that in mind. And then we have owners of projects, and they have investors, and they have a lot of stress on them in a lot of cases. They have a certain budget. There's this old saying, right? There's never enough money to do the project right the first time, but there's always enough money to do it over. So we first have to understand where they're coming from. But the attitude that leads to, Mike, is one where, it's, if you remember the Corona commercials, the most interesting man. I don't always statement, but there's that, in construction that might sound something like, I don't always bid low, but when I do, I bring plenty of change orders with me. So I don't always bid low, but when I do, I make sure I have a way of working the project to a place where I can make a lot of money on it. The problem is that attitude is fundamentally unsound, but it comes from a place of fear and survival. And to think differently for some people is they just won't do it. Those who can, those who are willing to do it, they have to stop thinking that change orders are the way to work your way into profitability, right? Change orders are really the gift that keeps on taking. It takes away from your relationships. It takes away from trust. It takes away from integrity. Takers take trust. And in the construction industry, if you are trusted, you are gold. But the minute you're a litigious person, you're a problem maker, it's all about you and what you can get, boy, the industry figures you out quickly. And then the only projects you can get are the ones that really aren't great projects that constantly keep you in a state of fear. We have to change that attitude. So the Sandler rule is really about, the only way to win is to help your client win. You have to understand that you've got to look out for them making money, them being successful. You will make money if you do that, but you got to stop fighting with clients and squeezing for profits. And I don't mean just, if I'm a general contractor, I'm the one who's paying the plumber, the roofer, the mechanical. I'm paying for all that. If I late pay them, if I squeeze them because my owner's squeezing me because I need to make a profit, I'm ultimately going to burn all the relationships. It's very short-term thinking. And you said it. We've got to get that attitude of long-term thinking. But this is some of the stuff that we really have to change our attitude about. We have to be willing to suspend disbelief. And we have to have the attitude that there are plenty of great projects where we can make money on those projects. And there's more of those than we can take. And I have to have that attitude, because if I give my people bad projects, it's going to stress them out. And now I'm going to have other employee morale issues I'm going to have to deal with. So that's a little bit of that.
I love that one. Totally second everything you said there. I think those are some great ideas, but I want to move on to the behavior bucket, because this one feels a little messy to me. This is our goals, plans, and actions, and it seems like doing the right thing at the right time in any commercial construction project seems to be critical. But what advice do you have here for the behavior bucket?
Well, the first behavior is we've got to not get mad at the world, right? And if we're going into our office and we're complaining about how everyone's trying to take advantage of us, that is infecting our entire business, and it affects the way that our project managers communicate with other contractors and the owner. It leads to that's the first bad behavior. And I'm not saying all contractors do it, but when you're under a lot of stress, sometimes therapy is just talking out your frustrations. You got to be careful about that. But the way things work now is the contractors believe that owners always want the lowest price, and that they have to, the behavior is to win, you have to get low, right? That's a bad behavior, in my opinion. Now, I know some people are going to say, hey, Matt, but that's the only way, that's how I've done it. And I realize if you look at your past behaviors, you're going to continue to get what you're getting now. You had a great interview with Ben Hardy, and I think every contractor should listen to that podcast, because your future self, your future business is not what you've been doing. And you've got to make a break from that. And so as contractors, the behaviors, we have to stop getting mad at people for trying to get the best price from us, right? Sandler has a great rule, right? We can never get upset at our prospect or our client for doing something we didn't tell them they couldn't do, right? So if we're just getting mad and inviting that kind of experience into the construction industry and just bidding low and getting mad, then I would say that's actually, we've got to ask, whose fault is that? And the reason is because there are contractors and contractors who are listening to this know that is not true. And I'll tell you why. Every contractor I ask, hey, do you have any owners or other contractors that sole source you? Meaning they don't bid you out. And the answer is yes. But we completely look past that. We got to stop getting mad at other people for something that we're inventing. Yes, if somebody doesn't know you and they want another bid on a project, they're going to ask for a low price. But that would be completely ignoring the fact that every contractor, every great contractor has taken the time to build relationships where they're sole source, because there's such great communication and understanding and respect and trust between the two businesses. There's no need to bid it out. And even if it is,
I love that. Yeah. I have a perfect story for this. It was actually my next door neighbor. A very impressive lady, was vice president of a hospital here in Kansas City, and they got approval to build a new wing. And my dad asked her, "Oh, are you going to bid that out? Who are you going to have bid on the project?" And she said, "Are you nuts?" She said, "We're building 100 new rooms in the hospital, and hospital rooms go for about $1,000 a night. So every day this new wing is not open, I'm losing $100,000 a day. Sure. If I take a week to make this decision, then it costs me $700,000. There's no way anybody's going to be that different on the price. I'm going to go with the people that I know, like, and trust, and get it done as fast as possible."
Well, that's a great point, Mike. We actually ran a study, and we asked, contractors sometimes have come to the belief that it's always low bid or it's about low bid. We ran a study, and what we found just in our market was about 220 owners and contractors, that when we asked the owner, how often do you buy on low price? And the answer was only about 10% of the time. Second question we asked was, when you ask your contractor for a discount, how often do you need the discount in order to award the business? How often do you need the discount? The answer was 30% of the time they need the discount. That means 70% of the time that you're asked as a contractor for a discount, they already have decided it's you and you don't have to discount. So a great Sandler technique there, kind of dipping into the technique bucket for just a second here, is simply asking, well, what if I can't, to the request? And what miraculously our contractors come back and tell us is, I wasn't going to do it, Matt. I wasn't going to ask, what if I can't? But I did. Somehow you popped on my shoulder and I said it. And our buyer or owner said, oh, I had to ask. Anyway, so it's our fears. It's getting over those behavioral fears and just doing the right thing. But I think the thing that I would say when it comes to behaviors, Mike, that's really important to land this point on is, number one, we have to have the behavior of getting in front of the right people at the right time. And that means a couple of things. One, contractors, know your niches. You do not have to bid everything to keep your people busy. That's like eating ice cream when you need nutrition. Okay? You can kid yourself that that's nutrition. It's not. It's gonna make you unhealthy over time.
They have these new keto ice creams that are full fat. They say gluten-free on the label and all kinds of stuff, man.
Right. But we also know that tricks us into eating sweets. So then it's like Thanksgiving and Christmas. And the next thing you know, we're like, well, I am craving a little bit of sweets and the keto ice cream isn't here. So now what am I going to eat? So, it leads to things. So first thing is focus on the niches. If you do only tilt up, if you do data warehouses, if you do apartments, if you do transition buildings, whatever it is you do, pick the niches, get really good at those so you're not exhausting your people by having them do weird projects they're not used to that they're going to get yelled at for. 2, build your ecosystem. Go out and meet with the owners that have these projects, meet with the architects, the engineers, the other contractors in your space that don't compete with you but would work with you on a project, and build your ecosystem around those relationships and get a reputation of being really good at those types of projects. And you will be awarded the projects where sometimes projects are underfunded. As a contractor, you don't want those. You want the well-funded ones like you just described, Mike, where they're saying, hey, there's a lot of risk in this project not being finished on time. I need a contractor that I can count on to get it finished on time. So focus there as your behaviors. And the last thing I would say here is that contractors work together. So it's not just about getting the job. It's about how you get the job, the behavior of building relationships, how you manage the job. We'll talk about some techniques for that. And then after the project, how do you win more work from that relationship you've now invested in? And one of the things that we talk about a lot as a behavior is contractors need to have project partnering meetings. That means when you have a project of any complexity, if it's a tiny project, I'm not talking about a home remodeling, I'm talking about a commercial construction project, get all the contractors together, talk about why this is important, have people share a little bit about themselves and their personal lives. Set some milestones where you're going to check in to make sure everybody at the right point is communicating well with each other. Celebrate the success of the project at the conclusion. By having that type of behavior, all these contractors that you're working with that may bid to you are going to give you better pricing because they can trust that you want to use their people or their time or their resources. So project partnering is a great behavior, and it uses all of the Sandler techniques, right? Bonding and rapport, setting expectations, understanding people's individual personal pain and motivations, setting expectations around resources, budget, time, money, and energy, and post-selling our expectations. It's really all Sandler, but it's in a project partnering meeting. So that's a great behavior. So those are a couple of ideas. But Mike, I know we want to talk techniques.
Yeah, and let's go there now. What techniques do you feel like stand out in commercial construction?
Yeah, and I would say the first technique is I'm going to go back to something I said at the beginning, which is contractors are about trust, and some of the best people in the world you'll ever meet. They truly care, but at the same time, they think that sometimes we can think that being direct and honest about what we want or need, not like you messed up on the project. That's okay. People can do that all the time. They even can yell at each other in those situations. But building rapport a lot of times is seen as a weird negative. Like, I don't do that. I have an engineering background. Just tell me what I need to do. Let me show me the blueprints. But instead, building rapport is really, we've got to understand the technique is not around manipulating or tricking someone into liking you. That's not the goal. It's really about genuinely connecting with them and building a relationship based on mutual respect, what both parties need, taking the time to understand what they need and how they operate. So those are things like understanding and using the DISC model, which we spend a lot of time in bonding rapport. It's understanding that person on a personal level. Where do they come from? Why do they live here? What's important? What are they trying to accomplish? What are the problems they typically have on projects? But let's get a little deeper than just bonding and rapport. Let's talk about something called a horizon meeting. See, sometimes we're such short-term thinkers. It's just we become a bid house. How do we get it? There's an opportunity. We read on the Dodge report that there's a new project and we want to bid on it. Well, when you do that, you're one of many. You're really going to have a hard time separating yourself. And if you don't believe me, just look at your website and all the other bidders that you suspect would be on the project. It would be impossible for an owner to differentiate. So a horizon meeting is to talk to an owner or somebody that could award you work before there's a project and talking about what's on the horizon and using bonding and rapport and some of the awesome, the super powerful Sandler techniques like upfront contract. So it might sound like this. Mike, you do a lot of multifamily apartment buildings, and I know that you have a project out for bid right now, and I'm happy to help you with a bid there, but that's not why I'm calling to meet with you. I'm calling to meet with you because I want to understand your company, your people, what your growth plans are, what markets you plan on being in, what your best contractors do to ensure your profitability and better shareholder returns. I'm proposing that we come in, we sit down for an hour, talk to me about the future of your business and the projects you see on the horizon. I'll do my best to relate the type of work we do and where you should and should not hire us. And maybe we can figure a project that's on the horizon where we can give this a test run and demonstrate and prove out better levels of communication, information, and results. How does that sound?
Really good.
Right? That's bonding and rapport and upfront contract, right? All the stuff we've all been trained on. The next is when it comes to your bid process, there's something called an interview where you're invited in to show your team and a PowerPoint slide on all the projects you've done and the experience of your team. And they all look the same. Instead of doing that, turn these into pain meetings. So you flip the PowerPoint presentation around. Don't start with your company. Don't start with the pictures of your people. Don't start with the projects you've done. You were invited because they know you already have done that stuff. Start by talking about the importance of the project and putting the bullet points of what are critical in terms of your understanding, and ask them to put them into a priority for you. And then when they say, well, this is the priority of things that are important, ask them why and study the Sandler pain process. And what you'll find is they're going to do all the talking in the meeting. You're going to get the award 80% of the time. Unless they already have someone in their pocket they've got to use, you're going to get a project from them in the future based on running the meeting that way. In other words, don't go and spill your candy in the lobby, as Sandler might say. Instead, learn everything you can about that prospect. So that's changing your interview process. And then the next is what I would call a project-centric satisfaction meeting. Set dates. You're already setting project progress meetings, but what's not happening in that project meeting is you're not asking the contractors that work with you, and you're not asking the owner to give you feedback on what they love that you're doing and what you could do better. Against, and this is important, so you may have to rewind and listen to this again, against a higher standard. And the higher standard is, Mike, in order for us to automatically be awarded the next project you have, what would you be scoring us on in this project to make that true? How often should we be checking in on each other? Mike, I'm going to need you to complain to me. I'm going to communicate those complaints to my people. If it's something that I think is your responsibility, let's sit down, get a cup of coffee, face to face, and talk about that. Okay? That's going to eliminate rework, which is a huge expense in projects. It's going to eliminate stress of people, which you should care about. But it's project centric, and it sets up a scoring system where you're all of your ecosystem can actively praise and complain so that you can make adjustments in the project to get the project done on time and on budget. And that's what's going to get you invited back. And then if there's one last technique, it would be a recapture. And we talk about this in the CARE model. So I'm not going to go through the CARE model, but CARE model is one of the most powerful ways of ensuring the future growth of your business. So that's, I'll let people, find that in another episode. But a year after your project, pick up the phone and call the owner and ask them how happy they are. Ask if they'd like you to walk the building with them. Most contractors won't do this because they're afraid that there'll be a problem that's found and the contractor will have to fix it out of the pocket. That's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at that is it's a horizon meeting.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think also if you're going to find a problem, you probably want to be there so they don't call somebody else, or you want to figure out how bad it is and get eyes on it anyway.
Right. Because if you're not fixing it, they're complaining to the market about you. That means you're going to lose another piece of business. It's very short-term thinking versus long-term owning and dominating your market as a contractor. So those are a couple of things that I recommend, and I don't want to overload. So, let me know if you have
questions. We've got a lot jam-packed in here already, but really great stuff. The one I wanted to highlight is that satisfaction meeting. I think for me, people don't really prioritize what's important with their projects very often. We kind of say, well, everything is. We want it on time, on budget, and high quality. And you're like, okay, you can pick 2 out of those 3. But which one is it really on this project? This project has to be done on time. We're going to have overage, penalties and all kinds of things. We have to hit the date. Or this project is a museum piece. It needs to be historically accurate, nailed to spec, and absolutely perfect. But we have an insane amount of budget for this. I'm thinking we just opened a new airport in Kansas City, and the new KCI, a ridiculous $1 trillion budget, multiple, something like that, I think. But there, it's like, okay, we're throwing artwork on the walls. We're doing everything. We're going gangbusters. We want this thing to be impressive when people see it. It's not necessarily about the other items. And I think we don't usually do a good job of getting people to actually pick what's really important.
And as you know, as part of the Sandler process and the pain funnel and understanding the compelling reasons to work together, it's not just what we want to accomplish and what it needs to look like at the conclusion. It's about the relationships that are formed. It's about the why this is important and how it impacts the people involved in the project. It's not just the finished project. There is a whole story behind every building. And that story can be one of litigation and people angry and not working together again and stress, or it can be one of personal lifetime satisfaction. So it's much bigger than just the building. My father was in commercial real estate, and he was a real estate developer for bank sites. And every time we drove by a bank, it was Security Pacific, a bank in the West. It's now, I think, probably Wells Fargo. But he'd say, I built that bank. And his little kid sitting in the back of the car, I look out the window and I say, bank branch, I don't know what he's talking about. He just found the property. But there was a tremendous sense of pride that he had, that there is something that exists that survives beyond him, that he had a part in. And, I really think that's bringing that passion back to the industry is what I think Sandler is all about. And I think it's just changing the minds, suspending disbelief, bringing in a new wave, a new generation that's going to embrace the technology and the mindset of great communication. It's all about great people and great projects, and we have to work together to make that happen. So I'm excited. I'm very excited for the future. I know we talked about the challenges in the beginning, but I believe we have a lot of solutions for those challenges. So I'm excited for the future.
Love that. Great message to wrap up. Once again, we've been talking with Matthew Neuberger, longtime Sandler trainer and frequent guest on the podcast. If you want to check out other stuff by Matt, check out our backlog of podcasts. And if you want to learn more about Sandler, go to sandler.com. We have many locations, so you can find a trainer near you. Or if you have many locations, we have an enterprise team to help you with that as well. And as always, subscribe to the podcast. You can do that anywhere you listen to podcasts, and make sure that you go check out our other free resources. We have YouTube videos, we have white papers, we have regular free monthly webinars. Ton of information to help that you need. So make sure you do that. And remember, whatever you are, be a good one. That's what I always say. The How to Succeed podcast is brought to you by Sandler, the worldwide leader in sales management and customer service training. For more information, go to sandler.com. See you next time.